Hello, I'm going to do a review and analysis of Watchmen The Ultimate Cut, which came out in 2009. It tells the story of an alternate history in where superheroes really do exist, and how their existence had an effect on the consequences of human history throughout our time. The superheroes in the Watchmen universe are actually just humans who have taken upon themselves to fight crime, much like Batman or the Punisher. They're vigilante type of superheroes and do not possess any real superpowers. When it was first released, some people saw it as awesome while others thought of it as pretentious, often spending long stretches of time focusing on one character's backstory. But what many people failed to realize was that this was because they were dealing with archetypal characters, each one of which was supposed to reveal something about the human condition. It all starts when retired costume hero The Comedian is mysteriously murdered, prompting Rorschach, the movie's quintessential conspiracy theorist, to start his own investigation. Like other conspiracy theorists, he is regarded as crazy and paranoid, even by his cohorts. When Rorschach believes that someone is trying to kill off the costume heroes, it is referred to as Rorschach's masked killer theory. Also, like many conspiracy theorists, he doesn't think very highly of liberals and fronts newspaper vendors waiting on the next edition of right-wing magazines. The Comedian, on the other hand, is meant to represent a black ops hitman. It is revealed that he participated in such covert operations as overthrowing Marxist republics and the assassination of John F. Kennedy from behind the grassy hill. He is meant as a metaphor for human savagery, committing numerous atrocities, while posing as a good guy to the masses. This would go unchecked until whistleblower Hollis, seated to the left, would write a book exposing him for his crimes. Hollis would later be killed by a teenage gang of conformist members wearing the same clothes and hairstyles. When one is confronted by Night Owl seated to the right, who usually prefers to do things by the book, his response is not unlike other people implicated in gangland-style killings, whining about victimization and citing his rights. Up until now, I've said that none of the vigilantes have superpowers, but there is one, Dr. Manhattan. But this is used as an opportunity to take this in a new, interesting direction, in that he doesn't just have superpowers, but the powers of a god. It all happens when an ordinary scientist gets trapped in an intrinsic field chamber and disintegrates. He later reassembles himself and is reborn days later as a blue super being. Because of the themes of death and rebirth as a deity, it could be said that Dr. Manhattan is an archetypal reference of none other than Jesus Christ. This is taken a step further when confronting the Comedian for shooting a pregnant Vietnamese girl. The Comedian lashes back, basically saying, well, why did you watch me then? You know? You're supposed to be all-powerful. Why didn't you do something to stop me instead of just judging me for it? Gee, who else could he might as well have been talking to? Eh? Like God, he'd rather split and run, trying to spend his time in another heavenly realm, leaving poor Laurie to try to convince him to return to Earth and help. Eventually, he does leave Mars, but by the time he returns, it's too late. The cataclysm has struck, killing off millions. The cataclysm was the handiwork of Ozymandias, the world's smartest man, who apparently is also the world's fastest man, being able to catch a bullet, and the world's strongest man, being able to take numerous punches to the face with barely a scratch. But what this character's meaning is goes deeper than that. It is my suspicion that he is meant to represent Lucifer. The Lucifer of Christian tradition is shown as being a master manipulator. Masquerading as an angel of light, he allegedly pulls the strings on world events with his unseen hand. Ozymandias also seeks to unify the world in a one-world government, speaking of his admiration of Alexander the Great, and masquerades as the world's hero. In fact, as you can see here in the original graphic novel, he has the Illuminati all-seeing eye on his breastplate, symbolizing his enlightenment. The cataclysm itself could be categorized as what's known as false flag terrorism, when you fake an attack by an outside enemy to gain support of the people, just as it has been speculated that 9/11 was an inside job set up by the so-called global elite. The global elite are widely implicated in trying to further a worldwide Luciferian agenda. They've even been videotaped participating in mock human sacrifices at Bohemian Grove, which is what you see here. In fact, I'm just going to take this time out to tell a story about my former history teacher who was in politics, who claims to have met these elitist members. I asked him if it's true, do they really engage in human sacrifice? And he said, "It has gotten so dark in this country that I'm afraid to talk about it with anybody, even with you." We later switched the conversation to Britain's Got Talent. In the end, the Watchmen are forced to cover up what really happened. If they reveal who set off the attacks, they may punish Ozymandias, but then the US and Russia would have no reason to join forces, pushing them back into the threat of nuclear war. But Rorschach is unwilling to compromise, and so is put to death by who else but Dr. Manhattan. This is ironic, considering that there is a belief among certain Satanists that when the end times come, Jesus will see that the world is more properly in Satan's hands, and will sign off ownership of the planet to Lucifer. And in the end, we see the God character giving up the world to Ozymandias. In the long run, though, Rorschach gets the last laugh as his expose of the events finds its way to the press. How this information affected the world is not stated in the end, but then again, nothing ever really ends. With its colorful characters, deep philosophical themes, and moral ambiguity, I crown Watchmen the best movie ever, possibly because it's scripted off of one of the best books ever written. The end.